It all began under the relentless tropical sun of the Bahamas, within the confines of a multi-million-dollar penthouse in the Albany Resort, where the future of global finance was being rewritten by a group of youngsters in cargo shorts. At the center of this burgeoning empire stood Sam Bankman-Fried, known to the world simply as SBF. He was not the typical image of a financial titan. He was a messy-haired, sleep-deprived MIT graduate who played League of Legends during high-stakes board meetings and claimed that his only goal in life was to make as much money as possible, just to give it all away. This was the core of effective altruism, a philosophical movement that gave SBF a moral halo, making him nearly untouchable in the eyes of the public and regulators alike. To the outside world, FTX was the gold standard of cryptocurrency exchanges, a fortress of liquidity and safety in an industry often compared to the Wild West. While other crypto moguls flaunted their yachts and private jets, SBF drove a Corolla and slept on beanbags, a masterclass in performative humility that bought him the trust of the world's most sophisticated investors. From Sequoia Capital to Tom Brady, everyone wanted a piece of the wunderkind who promised to revolutionize how the world moved value. But the foundation of this skyscraper was built on the shifting sands of a secret, incestuous relationship between FTX and SBF's private hedge fund, Alameda Research. Long before FTX became a household name, Alameda was a quantitative trading firm that had struck gold by exploiting the kimchi premium, the price difference of Bitcoin between Japan and the United States. However, as the markets evolved, Alameda's edge dulled, and it began taking massive directional bets that often went south. To keep the hedge fund afloat, a hidden backdoor was hard-coded into the FTX software. This wasn't a glitch. It was a deliberate feature that allowed Alameda to maintain a virtually unlimited negative balance on the exchange, effectively granting it access to billions of dollars in customer deposits without any oversight or collateral requirements. To mask the massive hole in the balance sheet, SBF and his inner circle utilized FTT, a token created by FTX out of thin air. They would pump the price of FTT, listed as a multi-billion-dollar asset on Alameda's books, and then use that pretend value as collateral to borrow real money from unsuspecting lenders. It was a closed-loop system of financial alchemy, a perpetual motion machine that worked perfectly as long as the music kept playing and the price of crypto kept rising. The first signs of the impending cataclysm emerged in the spring of 2022, when the collapse of the Terra Luna ecosystem sent a shudder through the entire crypto market. As lenders panicked and pulled their capital from various hedge funds, Alameda found itself in a desperate liquidity crunch. Instead of admitting defeat, SBF doubled down on his deception, funneling even more customer funds from FTX to Alameda to cover its mounting losses. He positioned himself as the lender of last resort, bailing out other failing firms to project an image of absolute strength, while in reality he was using stolen money to plug holes in a sinking ship. The turning point came in early November 2022, when a leaked balance sheet from Alameda Research reached the desks of investigative journalists. The document revealed the horrifying truth. The multi-billion-dollar empire was essentially backed by its own printed currency. The market's reaction was a mixture of confusion and burgeoning dread, but the fuse was truly lit when Changpeng CZ Zhao, the CEO of rival exchange Binance, announced on Twitter that he would be liquidating Binance's entire holding of FTT tokens due to recent revelations. What followed was a digital version of a classic bank run, unfolding at the terrifying speed of the internet. In a matter of hours, the perceived stability of FTX vanished. Panicked users rushed to the platform to withdraw their life savings, only to find that the withdraw button had become a gateway to nowhere.
Behind the scenes, the atmosphere in the Bahamian penthouse was one of frantic, disorganized chaos. SBF was on the phone with every billionaire and sovereign wealth fund in his contact list, begging for an $8 billion lifeline to bridge the gap. But the numbers simply didn't add up. Binance briefly offered a letter of intent to buy the company, but after a cursory glance at the catastrophic mess of FTX's internal books, they walked away within 24 hours, citing mishandled customer funds. The realization hit the global markets like a tidal wave. The world's most trusted exchange was insolvent. On November 11th, 2022, the empire officially surrendered, filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. SBF, once the darling of Capitol Hill and the face of the future, resigned in disgrace, leaving behind a crater that wiped out over $30 billion in value almost overnight. The post-mortem of the collapse revealed a level of corporate dysfunction that bordered on the absurd. John J. Ray III, the seasoned liquidation expert who had handled the Enron scandal, took the reins and declared that he had never seen such a complete failure of corporate controls. There were no proper boards of directors, no reliable financial statements, and no centralized record-keeping. Millions of dollars were spent on luxury homes for employees, and expenses were approved by supervisors using custom emojis and encrypted chat apps. The altruistic billionaire had been running a global financial giant like a disorganized startup, all while siphoning billions into a black hole of risky trades and political influence buying. The human cost was devastating. From retail investors in developing nations who lost their entire net worth to major pension funds that saw hundreds of millions evaporate, the fallout was global and deeply personal. SBF was eventually arrested, extradited, and subjected to a high-profile trial where his closest lieutenants testified against him, detailing a culture of deliberate fraud and systemic lying that had been baked into the company from day one. The fall of FTX is more than just a story of a failed company. It is a profound lesson about the dangers of unbridled hubris and the halo effect in the age of high-tech finance. It serves as a stark reminder that no matter how revolutionary a technology claims to be, it is still subject to the ancient human vices of greed and deception. The industry that was born from a desire to eliminate trusted intermediaries because they couldn't be trusted had, ironically, fallen victim to its blind faith in a single charismatic figure. The primary takeaway for the future is the absolute necessity of radical transparency and independent oversight. Verify, don't trust must shift from a catchy slogan to a non-negotiable standard of operation. We learned that a hoodie and a beanbag do not make someone a saint, and that complex mathematical formulas can be used just as easily to hide theft as they can to create value. The collapse of FTX stripped away the veneer of the crypto boom, forcing a painful but necessary maturity upon the market. It proved that in the absence of accountability, even the most noble-sounding intentions can become a mask for unprecedented crimes. As the dust continues to settle, the ghost of FTX remains a permanent warning etched into the history of finance. It tells us that whenever a system promises a revolution while operating in the shadows, the cost of entry is often everything we own. The tragedy lies in the fact that the tools of the future were used to execute a scam as old as money itself. For the survivors and the observers, the lesson is clear. True innovation requires more than just code and capital. It requires a foundational commitment to ethics that cannot be bypassed by an algorithm. The world emerged from this crisis more cynical and scarred, but perhaps with a more grounded understanding that in the pursuit of the next big thing, we can never afford to lose sight of the fundamental principles of honesty and stewardship. The empire of Sam Bankman-Fried was a mirage, a beautiful lie that serves as a tombstone
for an era of irrational exuberance, reminding us that any heights reached through deception will eventually be met by a fall of equal and opposite magnitude.